I've spent the last 2 years making my own cold porcelain clay at home, but today I'm putting it up against a store-bought cold porcelain clay. I want to see if it's actually worth buying versus making. So if you are in the US and you have access to a Michael's craft store, or just in general, if you have access to a Michael's, then you will be able to get your hands on this clay. Can a package of cold porcelain clay that is $9 from the craft store beat homemade cold porcelain clay? Well, we're about to find out. The packaging is 10 out of 10. They wrapped it twice, which tells me they want to keep freshness of the clay. Now the texture. Okay, guys, it felt really nice, but honestly, it was not as stretchy as my homemade cold porcelain clay. But the real test will be what happens when we color with acrylic, which we are at our first test now. Now, if you don't want to be messy, you can put some gloves on, because let me tell you, I had to wash my hands after this. But beyond that, I really wanted to see how the texture was, and it made it really soft. So we'll see how this sculpts. I'm going to be making a little fidget stone, or worry stone as some people call it. And I'm not going to do anything fancy. I just really want to see if this holds a shape and how it performs when I sculpt. The fun thing about most air dry clays and cold porcelain clay is you can use water to stick the pieces together. Most store-bought cold porcelain clays, you can get away with that. Everything that I'm using, by the way, is linked in the description. So if you guys want to buy anything, you can. And here I'm using acrylic paint for all the little details. Now we are going to try my homemade clay that I make at home. We're also using acrylic paint. I did not include the clip, but here we have the finished colored clay. And it did slightly change the texture, but what I can tell you about the homemade clay version is that it is very firm, so you are still able to sculpt things even when you put acrylic paint on it. So that is one thing I can really appreciate. And another fun fact, the pieces stick together perfectly, no need to use glue. Here is a side-by-side comparison. And we're off to our second test here in a second. We're doing little close-ups of how the clay turns out. Right off the bat, I had cracks on the first one. The homemade clay looks great, but we'll see how they dry. Okay, this is the second part of our homemade clay. We're going to be using a chalk pastel test. So what I can tell you about the homemade clay is it colors beautifully with chalk pastels. And I'm making another little fidget stone. We're going to be making a little chick. I'm cutting it for time, but this is the finished product. And more importantly is our store-bought clay. We're coloring this with chalk pastels to see how the texture holds up. And I can tell you that it is slightly softer, not as soft as the acrylic paint, but it still posed a little bit of a challenge to sculpt. We're also making another fidget stone, and as you can see, it's way softer. I will say it was a lot harder to sculpt because any kind of pressure made it just kind of be all wonky. The good thing about cold porcelain or air dry clay is you can stick pieces with water. So that's what I'm doing right now. And I did try mixing a lighter piece of the clay and part of the purple to see how it mixes to make a lighter clay. And of course it worked. So here I am putting a little mouth area for the bear, and I'm using water to smooth it out to hopefully avoid some cracks and imperfections. And of course our chalk for blush. Here's a side-by-side comparison. What do you guys think? Let's talk my final thoughts. Craft Smart Cold Porcelain Clay. We're going to talk about the pros first. So the pros are the price point for the amount of clay is crazy, so good. And honestly, I would have to say, after trying to color it with acrylic paint and chalk pastels, it did work and it did get the color really, really nice. As you can see by these pieces that I'm showing you here, they've been drying for 3 days now since I made this video. And I will say, while I didn't like the cracking and a little bit of the chalkiness look of the pieces, these honestly didn't dry bad at all. I would have to say that this is probably better than if you try to make your own cold porcelain clay with cheaper ingredients. And I say cheaper because I've personally tried making it with Elmer's school glue, and while it works, it is very cracky, and I almost always get cracks with that formula. However, I did find that when you put acrylic paint into the formula of the clay, you soften the clay quite a bit, and so it becomes a little bit hard to sculpt with. I would say a good way to combat that is, after mixing the colors, maybe let them sit out for about 5 minutes or so, and then try to sculpt. So I would say that's the only con of the clay, is the texture changes so much when you color the clay with acrylic paint. It's slightly changed with chalk as well. Overall, I would say the clay is really, really soft when it touches the warmth of your hands. So in my mind, it makes it a little bit harder to sculpt for beginners that don't know how to work with this clay. For the price point and what you get, I would 100% say this is worth a try. For myself, as a moderate experienced sculptor, I would say this posed a lot of challenges for me. In comparison to my formula of cold porcelain clay, my translucent clay is just so much easier to work with. It's a little bit firmer. It doesn't get overly soft. It holds textures really well. I think it's just easier to sculpt with. But I will say, if you don't have access to the ingredients, if you're watching this from another country and you're like, wait, I don't have access to ingredients to buy it, it's too expensive. Well, more likely than not, I'm noticing a trend here. A lot of countries have their very own cold porcelain clay. Look up your local art store or a place locally that may carry cold porcelain clay, because you just might find that their cold porcelain clay is amazing. There are 2 ingredients in my clay recipe that I believe set my cold porcelain clay apart from a lot of other homemade recipes. Number 1 is the glue. A lot of cold porcelain clay makers and people might not share this, but I don't want to gatekeep, and I want to share what I know. I believe that sets my recipe apart because it does not crack. It is foolproof. The second ingredient would be vegetable glycerin, and I would say a good quality vegetable glycerin. Keeps it hydrated enough to where it doesn't crack and get chalky, and gives it the porcelain finish that we know and love. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please tell me in the comments, because the suspense is killing me. I've got to know, what are your thoughts about the little things that I made? Which one would you try? And stay tuned, because I will be posting my translucent cold porcelain clay recipe literally after this video. So stay tuned for that. See you guys in my next video. Be sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you know when I post. See you guys next time.